Welcome to a book review of George Orwell's 1984. And it's a really good book, and I'll definitely recommend it, so let's jump right in. This book was published in 1959 and set in 1984, as the title suggests. And in this Orwell dystopian novel, there are three superstates: Oceania, Eurasia, and Eastasia. And honestly, I'm not really studied up on the map that great because it's been a while since I've read the book. And, I'll leave a map down in the description below to tell you about the map. But our main character, Winston Smith, lives in Oceania, and he lives in England. So in this new setting in the future, you can't do anything that humans should be able to do. You can't think for yourself, you can't speak for yourself, you can't do anything for yourself because the government is constantly watching and controlling you. They constantly watch you, they hear everything you say, and there's no getting out of the view or the hearing of the party. And the party is at the top. And this is where it gets really disturbing because there's a term called doublethink. And doublethink is where, if you know something to be true, if the party says otherwise, then you have to accept that that's not actually true, even if you know. So that's how they've brainwashed these people, is they've told them the party is always right. So that brings us to our conflict in the story, and every story has a conflict. And our conflict comes with the characters of Winston Smith and Julia, his girlfriend. And so what we have with Winston Smith is someone who can think for himself, which creates a very interesting story because you're not supposed to think for yourself. And so it takes him, he goes through the journey of the novel thinking for himself, and he pays the price. And I'm not going to spoil the ending, but he definitely pays the price, he and his girlfriend, Julia. So in Oceania, there's three classes: the inner party, the outer party, and the proles. And the proles are the lowest of the low, the working class. And the outer party is the top 13%, but they are the ones that are in the middle. They're kind of sandwiched in between the two powers. And then the inner party are the true brainwashers. They control everything. They tell the proles what to do, and it's referenced several times in the book that the proles greatly outnumber the inner and the outer party, and if they could just have the mind to see through the party and rebel against the inner and the outer party, and they could easily topple the regime. But they can't because they're not educated. That's another thing. They don't educate these people, and they make sure they're not smart enough to rebel against the party. So in 1984, the outer party works in what's called ministries, and there's four main ministries, and we're going to go over them all. There's the Ministry of Love, which deals with torture; the Ministry of Peace, which deals with war; the Ministry of Truth, which deals with propaganda; and the Ministry of Plenty, which deals with economics. So in Oceania, there's three classes: the inner party, the outer party, and the proles. And the proles are the lowest of the low, the working class. And the outer party is the top 13%, but they are the ones that are in the middle. They're kind of sandwiched in between the two powers. And then the inner party are the true brainwashers. They control everything. They tell the proles what to do. And it's referenced several times in the book that the proles greatly outnumber the inner and the outer party. And if they could just have the mind to see through the party and rebel against the inner and the outer party, and they could easily topple the regime. But they can't because they're not educated. That's another thing. They don't educate these people, and they make sure they're not smart enough to rebel against the party. And so the Ministry of Peace concerns itself with war. And the war part of this novel is kind of vague, but from what we understand from the novel is that basically warfare is fought over basically nothing, because the three super states, Orwell says, they're too big to conquer each other, so but they're basically just fighting because of nationalism to their country and for population control, and because they think war is necessary to satisfy nationalism, and they fight over just useless territory constantly. And so that's what the Ministry of Peace does. And so the Ministry of Truth this is where we get to Winston's ministry, where he works at. And what the Ministry of Truth does is it pretty much pumps out propaganda. Anything that the party could be proven wrong as is burned. So several times we see Winston have a note that's wrong from the party, and he'll rewrite it so that the party is always perfect, and he'll put the old note in a chute and it'll burn it. And so that never existed, and so they burn anything that they don't want to exist, and they bump out propaganda. So the Ministry of Plenty concerns itself with economics, and this one's pretty simple and pretty brutal, but they basically just lie to the people about the demands, and they'll say, razor blades or chocolate or boots, which there's some odd production means in this book, but or like we're up 200% when it really didn't go up at all or went down. They just lie to the people and pretty much try to make the pros feel good about, try to make them think they have more than they actually have. So the next thing I will cover is Big Brother. And Big Brother is a fictional character in this book that the party tells everyone exists. He's the almighty. He's basically a god to them. Now, the inner party knows he doesn't actually exist, and so does the outer party, but, the pros don't know that. They think Big Brother is a real person. He's not. They just look up to him as a fictional deity that rules over everything, just so they can have a hierarchy, just the power for the pros to believe in. So this might be one of the best books I've ever read, and I would definitely recommend it, but it's not for the faint of heart. If you're easily provoked or disturbed, I wouldn't read this book at all. The ending was, don't read this book if you're an easily, moved person, or just take it with caution. It's not like Animal Farm. If you've read the classic Animal Farm, which is rather lighthearted, it's not like that. It's really, really grim, and yeah, don't read it if you're easily disturbed, please. Buy this book on Amazon for yourself. I post a link down in the description below. Otherwise, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.